Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the August garden checklist video. I do one of these each month. A couple of years ago, I was much more thorough and just kind of did an everything you could probably think of for August video. If you want to go back and take a look at that one, I tend now to do, just what I have going on in my garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B. So let's just jump right in. Planting. Planting is something I'll do year round. I'm in Zone 7B. The soil doesn't freeze here in the winter, and then in the summer, it's hot, but we tend to get enough thunderstorms, and we don't tend to have 100+ degree days. So I kind of plant year round. A lot of you watching probably wouldn't be doing that. If it was 105 and I lived in Texas every day, I probably wouldn't be planting in August, and others that have not gotten rainfall, maybe those kinds of things. So you make that decision. Based on your space. But I do continue to plant. There's probably some pretty good deals out there, leftover plants from the spring that are potentially discounted. There's also probably new arrivals coming in for fall, maybe some things that bloom in the fall that you can take a look at. I was just down at a nursery in Augusta, did a video from that nursery and brought back a lot of pieces. I like to buy small plants when I can, but these are just going to go right in the ground. What I'll do though frequently when I plant something new during the summertime is if it has a lot of new growth on it, that's really what is using water and nutrients, is that new growth. And so I'll do a little bit of tip pruning on newly planted things in the heat of the summer. Again, I know a lot of you aren't going to go out and be planting. If you're thinking about adding grasses, I don't like to plant those in the fall going into winter when they're dormant. So if you're going to plant those, I'd get those in the ground sooner than later. And grasses tend to be super, super tough in the summer heat. So if you're adding grasses, I'd get it out of the way now or wait until next spring to do that. The other thing you might be thinking about planting right now is for a lot of us here in the South, we have a very long summer annual season. And some of our early planted summer annuals might be looking a little rough at this point. You might be able to find a good deal on some replacement annuals for those things, whether it's zinnias or petunias or whatever the heck it is you like for annuals. They might be on a discount, or they could be done from seed. I've got time to do zinnias and celosia and what else? Cosmos, I could do from seed right now and get a second round. Or here also in the South, you might find some annual lantana. And, for me, that would bloom right up until November as an example of a great flowering, colorful thing for the fall. One other consideration on planting this time of year would be whether or not it's a marginal plant, winter marginal. So something like a palm or something like that you were pushing the boundaries on. If you were going to get those in the ground, you'd need to get them in the ground sooner than later. They need to establish themselves some before they go into that first winter. Otherwise, I might just take those off the list and put them in the following spring. That way they have a whole season to get rooted into the ground. The vegetable garden's gone completely wild. We've had a few thunderstorms here during the month of July, and I haven't been here to do some of the maintenance that I normally do. So this has really gotten kind of out of control. I need to do some pruning in here. I need to desucker some of these tomatoes, just kind of get some more air movement moving through them. But there's definitely maintenance to be done here. Need to be picking your produce as much as possible just to keep them blooming, keep them working. On the super, super hot days here in the summer, if you have some sort of shade cloth, some ability to put some sort of shade over top of them, doesn't matter really what it is. Don't cover them in plastic, but some sort of breathable fabric or it could even be some sort of thing that you set up when you when you go down to the beach or something like that over top of them. Doesn't really matter if you want to shade them a bit during the middle of the day. If you've got diseased plants in your vegetable garden, it might be best to just go ahead and pull those out and don't throw those on your compost pile, but go ahead and thin those out. I do a second application of an organic fertilizer. I fertilized this garden back in February and haven't done it since, and everything has just exploded in here because I've been building soil. This was compost. There's been wood chips on it, so when these tomatoes got planted in rows, wood chips went down the middle. I didn't put wood chips up against the plants, but wood chips went down the middle. By the time fall rolls around and it's fall vegetable garden time, those wood chips will have broken down and they'll become compost for my fall vegetables. You can probably find additional vegetable plants. If you're in the South here and you have a long fall, you can still put tomatoes in, still put peppers in, and okra and some of these warm season things. I don't, because I do a cool season crop in here and I have a limited space, and so this is my summer vegetables, and when they're done, and fall vegetables will be going in. I will be showing the seeding of my fall vegetables here in the middle of August. So if you're tuned into the channel, you'll see that. If you're going to be doing lettuce and kohlrabi and kale and broccoli and cauliflower and whatever fall vegetables work in your area, I would go ahead and acquire that seed now, because seed has been a little scarce the last couple of years. And I will actually go ahead, when I'm ordering my fall vegetable seeds, I'll go ahead and order my spring vegetable seeds at the same time, and that way I know I'm going to have them in hand. This pile of compost in front of the camera was actually from my potato bags. I'm going to reuse it in the vegetable garden for my fall vegetables. And so as summer vegetables are coming out, diseased things, that kind of thing, I'm recomposting this space, getting it ready for the fall. I talked about buying seed. One thing that you'll see coming up during the fall is collecting seed in this landscape. So this is lettuce from in the spring, and it has set lots of seed, and those are being collected. So I talk about buying seed, but I'm trying to buy less and less seed and collect it right here in the garden. Just make sure that you're keeping the labels on things and you know what they are as you're collecting the seed. So I know this still has the Butter Crunch label on it. So this is Butter Crunch lettuce that was left in the garden to flower. I actually have quite attractive little yellow composite flowers that the pollinators like, and then collect the seed from them later. And speaking of seed collecting, things like my dahlias that I do from seed, as these flowers are spent here in the late summer, these seeds will be collected as well. But there'll be videos on the channel for seed collecting and storing them through the winter, and then germinating them in February and March for next season's garden. On annuals and perennials that you're not going to be collecting the seed, you can deadhead them. Take the spent flowers off, and if they don't think they've made seeds frequently, they'll send up some additional flowers. I don't refertilize my perennials. My perennials, the things that die to the ground and come back the following spring, they got fertilized when they got fertilized. The soil's been amended enough. They're all great. I don't want to be pushing them here going into fall as they're trying to start thinking about going to sleep. But some of the annuals in the landscape, if they're not performing as well as they were early on, they can get a little bit of a haircut. Pretty much any flowering annual that's in the landscape can get a little bit of a haircut and a little bit of organic fertilizer. Again, if they're slowing down, don't do a lot of general pruning. If there's a crazy limb on something, this vine needs to be, some control added to it. This grapevine. And so, anything that's past the door here, I'm going to cut it off. So, not the best time of year necessarily to be pruning some things. I'm going to have some pruning videos coming up that you can see what I can and can't prune toward the end of summer. But keep in mind that anything you're pruning now, sometimes that will stimulate growth so late in the summer that it doesn't have a chance to harden off before you get a hard freeze. So I'm careful with my pruning, selective with my shrub and tree and perennial pruning, just because, again, I'm trying not to make sure they're in full flush when they get their first frost this fall. So another thing that went absolutely wild without me being here for a few weeks with a few thunderstorms and in the heat of the summer is weeds. Weeds definitely take advantage very quickly, given any opportunity whatsoever. What I want, though, is to keep them from coming to seed. So any weeds I'm seeing in the garden right now, I'm trying to get them before they come to seed, because that's what'll happen. It happens very, very quickly in the heat of the summer like this. Mulch, you can see this mulched path has been done with wood chips, and you can see that there are basically no weeds in it whatsoever. So I think this is, where my mulch is thinned a bit in the beds, I've got weeds all over the place that need to be taken care of. But where the fresher mulch was put down in this path, when it hasn't had any foot traffic on it really, you won't see any weeds. Also, there's more consistent moisture, where this mulch is fresher, and it's probably cooler underneath this mulch as well. So there's a huge advantage to keeping the ground covered, which is what I talk about virtually all the time. So weeding, mulching, watering is, of course, an issue this time of year for a lot of you who may not be having any regular rainfall. My garden now, most of the shrubs have been in the ground for coming up on 24 months, and they are, as long as I get a rain every 3 or 4 days, they're not in any need of water anymore, so which is kind of nice. The annuals need ongoing water. Of course, the containers are needing water consistently. Those of you who aren't getting regular rainfall, when you water deeply, and try to skip times as much as possible. I know that can be hard sometimes, but you definitely don't want to be loving them to death. When the plants get under stress in the heat, they go into what we would call summer dormancy. And so, they're just sitting there waiting for water and waiting for the temperatures to cool, but they're not really growing. And so, be careful not to overwater during those very, very stressful times for the plants. And when you water extremely deep. I don't do, again, any fertilizing this time of year on these, in general fertilizing on these shrubs or trees or any of my perennials, because I don't want to be pushing new growth on them going into the fall. Same as I talked about with the pruning. Anything you're throwing at them this time of year could potentially start them to grow. Again, though, your annuals, containers, baskets, they may need a little bit of a haircut and a second application of an organic fertilizer going into early fall, so that you can get some color on them right up until we get a frost later in the year. One of the things you'll notice is that by mid-July into August, the beneficial insects really start to show up and start taking care of some of the pests in your garden. So I don't do any spraying early on. I'll see some aphids, I'll see some chewing insects, but I know that the beneficials always lag behind them a bit. And so I don't want to disrupt that process of allowing the ladybugs. I don't want to be killing ladybugs. And so, those things, they build up their numbers to combat, as they find things to eat. And so that takes a while. So at this point, I don't see as many actually chewing pesky things as I did a month and a half ago, which is kind of fun to watch, honestly. And it's part of gardening, those kinds of little chewed leaves, and that's just part of gardening. So, I let them roll with it. Cataloging in August is super important, or just writing down your successes and failures. Some of the annuals that you may have bought that have underperformed in your garden, you can look at it several different ways. You can say, I may not have amended that space enough. That space may not be really ready for annuals or flowering color. Maybe I need a little bit more compost. Maybe I need to get that ground covered with some wood chips for a season and let them break down and see if I can improve the space, because I'm seeing that same annual somewhere looking great, and for me it's underperforming. So you may evaluate it as you need more work on that space, or evaluate it or potentially you've tried it a couple seasons now and it's just not one that performs well in your soil, your area, your heat, your sun, your shade, whatever it is, and scratch it off the list. And so that's what I'm doing every year. I'm looking at the annuals and perennials that were bought or done from seed, or however it was I did them, or divided from a neighbor, whatever it is. I'm looking at them and deciding whether or not they continue to have a home in this space year over year. And so I think that's super important, especially in a hot month, a super hot month or super cold month. You can do that early in the morning or in the evening when it's not so hot. And that's kind of fun to document. And I tend to buy 2 or 3 of the same tomato year over year, seed. I do them all from seed, and add 2 or 3 new varieties. And then I'll look at those 2 or 3 new varieties and go, that 2 of them aren't great. And then that gives me a spot for 2 more for the following year. So that's kind of how I'm going about it during this month when things are just bursting with growth. It's easy to tell the great performers from the performers. So mainly here in August on this channel, you're going to see me assert some control over this space. There'll be a few things pruned. There'll be some weeding done. There'll be some mulching. I'll fertilize a few things. You'll see that all documented in videos. The other videos you're going to see, one I've already put up is from Cheekwood Estate and Gardens in Nashville, Tennessee. There's one from the Chicago Botanic Garden coming. There's 2 from the Morton Arboretum coming. I am filming with Mark at the Ralston sometime during the later in the month during August, and so you're going to see lots of public gardens. And if there are public gardens near you, I would definitely visit them and see what's looking great at the toughest time of the year. You know, you would consider like January the toughest month of the year in the winter, and August here the toughest month, or maybe it was July, but you'll see what things kind of survived that and really made it through and pushed through and looked great at a difficult time of year. So I encourage you to go out and visit those public gardens. Taking care of your birds too. I make sure that there's water out here for the birds. You know, they can go without water otherwise, or they go over to my tomatoes and start getting the water out of my tomatoes. So I give them water in a bowl somewhere and continue to feed them as well. So thank you guys very much for following along with these monthly checklist videos. I'll be back in September with another one. Thanks for watching.